Welcome back, everybody. Got my buddy Nathan Brooks on the show. Nathan is a big real estate investor out of the Kansas City, Missouri market, and this guy is buying and selling a lot of houses. So I was fortunate to have dinner with Nathan a couple months ago when he was out in San Diego in my neck of the woods, and I figured he'd be a great guest to get on the show, even though I didn't know how to hold a pair of chopsticks. So Nathan, thanks for coming on the show today.
We can't let that totally go without just saying that we did practice with these chopsticks, and we did do what we would say some step-by-step lessons in the chopsticks. So
Yeah, I'd say so.
would you report back on like how that's going now? Like, is the level of your chopsticking at
Yeah.
a different level, or?
Yeah, I'm sad to say that I probably use a fork 99% of the times, and I'm actually not a big eater with my hands either. So if I'm in a situation where especially if I'm on a date with a girl or something, my goodness, I'm not going to go near chopsticks because if she sees I can't use those things, that's a game. That's a deal killer at that point. I'm walking out the door with my head
A
down. So
deal killer. Well,
anyway, yeah.
there's a really simple solution to that, Greg.
What is it?
Step 1, learn how to use chopsticks.
Yeah.
Step 2, impress the girl with chopsticks.
Yes. Step 3, problem solved. So
Problem solved. Done.
yeah. Awesome. So Nathan, yeah, you're doing a lot of deals. I figured once again, you'd be a great guest for the show. So can you kind of tell everyone a little bit about your background, what you did before real estate, and then we can kind of get into your story before the 07, 08 run up?
Sure. Yeah. Nathan Brooks out of Kansas City. We have a turnkey company here, Bridge Turnkey Investments. We are on pace to do, we have looked at the numbers and actually will do 150 houses out of Kansas City this year. We are on pace to do it and literally just looked at that yesterday with my business partner and just pumped, man, to really start seeing those things come together. And so our primary business is on helping investors invest in real estate that maybe they're not in a market that they can cash flow or something like that, or we have a lot of military folks too that we get to work with. So it's cool to really be able to solve those real estate problems for people who either can't or don't want to do the rehab and that kind of stuff themselves. So I was a professional musician prior to my years of real estate. So I played music professionally for about a decade. And
wow, I didn't know that, man. I did not know that. All the Bigger Pockets episodes, I did not know that about you. I was probably listening. I was just looking for the nuggets. I'm like, forget about the music. I didn't know that.
Yep.
Awesome.
So I play piano, play bass, play guitar, sing, taught theory in college. And so I love playing. And so now I get to play piano for myself and for bass to do a lot of church stuff still, and then I play for my kids. So they love to dance. So we have a little dance off in the house and play piano. So it's fun.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you were doing music. So what made you want to get into the investment real estate game? And have you always been based out of KCMO? Have you always been out of Kansas City?
I've always been out of Kansas City. I've been on different sides of the area, and I live kind of on the outskirts now, and I have home on 11 acres. So it's awesome. I love where I live, and it's a little further out, a little further drive, but it's definitely worth it to have that peace and quiet and a place to just, jack around, run chainsaw, drive a tractor, shoot a shotgun, all the important stuff.
All the stuff you can't do in San Diego.
Yes. And all of that. You park a tractor in your driveway or something and see what happens in San Diego.
Yeah.
Probably
the zoning department at my door immediately knocking at my door.
Excuse me, sir. This is actually where I sleep. This is my tractor home. And they're like, tractor homes have walls, sir, not wheels. So I think that, as far as, getting into real estate, it was kind of that dream of having a really cool business. I always enjoyed putting stuff together, and I always enjoyed the creativity of putting together, whether it was a deal or colors or design or writing a song, all these things require like that creative element to it.
Sure.
And so to be able to kind of tie that together, and I don't know if this was a changer in my adolescence or not, but as a little kid, we grew up on a street where there's a bunch of new construction. And I didn't really appreciate that at the time, but I could go walk and look at like a live job site, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So I'd haul all this material back to my house and build like the world's worst little wood structure underneath my parents', you know, deck. And, but I had a blast doing it. And I always just really enjoyed doing the real estate stuff. So I jumped at the chance of doing it.
Awesome. So I've heard, we've had some discussions before. So you kind of, before you got into the real estate game, you were definitely a musician, which is something I didn't know. So what was your business model like before, the '08 run up? Because I know, you've been in the game for a while now and you've experienced a market cycle. So I'd like to kind of hit on that for a little bit, kind of how you got initially started in the business, what your model was, and then some lessons you might have learned from 2000, the last run up, because now, I'm seeing, I think a lot of us are seeing it's getting pretty hot again, and there's going to be a correction soon. It's already kind of the start in the high end markets in some of the areas I buy in.
Mm-hmm. So I think, I really got in right around that same time, 08, 07, 08. And, my business crashed and burned in 09 with the filing of bankruptcy. And it's a miserable experience. And so I think the lessons are important, when I look back, and I think, is that where your kind of your mind is at as far as
just kind of like like, some things that could have happened. Was it the market, some mistakes, and then, just some stuff we could talk about with the listeners. So like, if that happens again, they can,
100%.
Yeah.
100%. So I think there's a couple of things. First of all, know what your actual numbers are. So if you're going into deals, you should understand what a yes is and what a no is, and be able to explain it very quickly, very clearly. What is it?
Yeah.
Second is, where is your margin of safety? And Tony Robbins in the Money Mastering the Game book, I can't remember who he's interviewing, but it's one of these, billionaire hedge fund guys, and talking about, they actually go into a deal and they say, the first thing is not actually solving how much money we make. It's how we make sure we don't lose. And I think we don't often think about what's the worst case scenario first. What's the worst case scenario? Like, can I get out of this and can I get my money back? And so, we definitely look at that. And we also have much, much more clear criteria. So like, I'm very much looking at what is my return on capital? What is my all-in LTV? What is my construction cost too? So, right. So if you're a rehabber, you better understand, like, if you're spending a ton of money on construction, the bigger that number is, the more risk there is in that deal. It's just inherently, there's more stuff to fix. So now there's more room for error. So, we look at all that stuff. And then also just kind of knowing more specifically, more specificity, more kind of steel on target for the one thing or the few things that you're doing in your business. And if you're trying to be a jack of all trades right now, it's really not a good idea. And I think that you really stay in your lane, you double down on the things that you're good at, and be really clear on what that criteria is. And that really helps keep you out of trouble and doing stuff, that shiny object. You're like, oh, I can go look at that deal and maybe I can make some money on it. We literally stopped doing anything else but turnkey. We're just really focused on it. We're really clear on that. And we understand what is a yes and a no. And then, it makes us operate faster. It makes us understand more clearly what we will buy. And it also makes us more easy, to tell the story to our clients and to the people we work with too. So
that's awesome. So really, and that's a common denominator I see with a lot of successful guys doing high volume, is they're just so focused on their one thing, their niche, their unique ability as a company. And they don't get, like, a lot of new investors, they get the shiny object syndrome. They're, hey, I want to be a lease option guy. And then the next week they want to do, sub 2 owner financing, and they want to wrap the third week. And it's like, you just got to stay focused until you have a solid track record. And then maybe if you want to pivot, eventually you can pivot. And so back before the market went down, were you just deviating? Was it a combination of the market kind of going down and some deviating, and you said not knowing your numbers, and that's what kind of caused a lot of the issues?
Well, I think, and I want to hit back on the one thing too, but with the crash time, it was kind of the culmination of all that. So I didn't know what I was doing. I was in a bunch of different stuff. I literally didn't know how to comp properties correctly. I had no experience, no knowledge, no mentor, no, nothing. I just literally ready, fire, aim.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I own a bunch of houses. I have no idea what I'm doing. My quote unquote business partner is an absolute miserable failure.
Oh my
And
goodness.
he's the guy who's supposed to run construction. He just basically bails on me. I'm trying to, get people from like the day labor pool, trying to like, I'm literally just like, just,
Yeah.
so it's just basically if you wrote a book called All the Things Not to Do,
Yeah.
then I just wrote this incredible like multi-volume set of all the dumb things not to do. And so, I can't even tell you the number of things, we'd spend hours talking about them.
Yeah.
So it's coming back to having a clear vision. In Michael Gerber's E-Myth, he talks about, people who have that entrepreneurial seizure and all of a sudden like, oh, I'm going to own my own business. Greg, we should be business partners and let's go do this and that, and all of a sudden we have this excitement around it, but we don't put the tactical steps in place of what that actual business looks like. What are the metrics we're tracking? Greg, what numbers are you responsible for? Nathan, what numbers am I responsible for? And what is our role? And I wanted to hit this, so I kind of teed it up for myself. So the other piece of this was I had a fundamental misunderstanding of what my gifts are and what my skills are. And so it was very easy and is very easy for me to buy houses. That's never been the problem. It's all of the details. And so I would get myself into a situation where I could figure out how to put that deal together, but then managing it and running it. And so I think the other piece is, as we're looking at a downturn, there's always opportunities. There's always things that we can make money in every market cycle. We don't need to be afraid. We need to be thoughtful. We need to have a plan, and we need to know what our job is. And I think that, for me, I am not the guy to manage anything, really. You don't want me managing anything because I'm terrible with details. You want me saying, great, there's a big problem. How do we deal with this issue? Or let's create the correct culture in our office. Or what is that big 5 or 10 year goal? And what are the steps we can see over the clouds, understand where we're going literally, even though nobody else on the team can see it. Yes, that's me, right? I can design that. I can see it in my mind, and then I can help influence that with my team. And so, the other biggest learning of this, and it's been a constant learning until I let it go. And I also brought people in who would lead, and a business partner who understood those things of mine either also was, you have to have people on your team, whether it's quote unquote, employee or business partner or whatever, who understands your strengths and weaknesses, and then who actually fill those gaps, and not just like a stopgap measure, but they love doing it. So if that's bookkeeping, great. If that's, going and buying houses, great. If it's understanding how to put that transaction together and manage it on and bring it to the closing table, great. But make sure, like, if I were anybody in this business right now, I would be looking at my systems. I'd be looking at my staff. I'd be looking at understanding, like, fundamentally, if this gets harder, not easier, then what are the places that it breaks? And then
that is so key. Yeah, so key. Oh man, I'm so glad you said that. And basically, what you're saying, I want to make sure I understood you correctly, is that if you're good at one thing, get a partner or an employee who's good at the other thing. And then, 2 + 2 is 4, right? Or 1 + 1 really equals 4. You can really multiply your success because you have someone compensate for your weaknesses. And if you're really good at buying houses and your partner's really good at operations and logistics, you marry those two together and you can just go off to the moon. And that's how you're, doing 150 houses a year. I mean, some people can't even imagine doing 2 houses a year. You're doing 150, It's impressive.
Well, it's all relative, right? So, and I think that's the thing where we failed over and over again was then like the type of employee that you hire. And then you want somebody like, oh, Greg, I like you. You like me. You don't like chopsticks. I love chopsticks. We can figure this out.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we're like, well, what if you aren't good at the details either, but we like each other, right? And I'm a high I if you look at the disc profile. So, and you're probably a high I. Are you a high I?
I've spent more time with the Kobe test, but
Okay.
in terms of the disc test, I'm more of like the visionary. Like I'm good at like getting started, but the implementation, the follow up is a debacle. Like I'm like
Right.
that energy, you know.
Exactly. I bet you're a high I. You definitely are a people person, but
Yeah,
I the fact the reason I brought that up was that once we start to understand the people that we're putting in those positions, we actually set them up to succeed. And the other thing that I've started to do, and it's not necessarily important to have a business partner because now you also don't, you might be fighting in the vision box, right?
yeah,
You want to make sure. I got lucky. My business partner and I have very different skill set. Thankfully, we're not visionary. He's an amazing integrator and he's an amazing, he has visionary qualities, but he is incredibly good and is in the like it love it box with a bajillion spreadsheets and 17 monitors open and like every single thing on
yeah,
any possible detail that could be anywhere. He's like, oh yeah, I got that. And I'm like, I don't even know the login to get into that.
yeah. Right.
He's like, it's in the blah 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 spreadsheet. I'm like, cool. Could you just screenshot that and send it to my phone, please? I cannot do it. But I can go have that conversation with that banker. I can go, talk about, generate $1 million opportunity for us as a business, or, bring in, business through podcasts or writing or whatever that might be. And those are the things I love to do anyway. So, sitting in that seat and then being able to also let go. So you have to train, you have to level up those people that you're asking to do that job, give them the autonomy to actually go do it, and then pull yourself out of those seats where you're not really really good, where you don't want to be, or maybe where you shouldn't be. So that's important too.
Man, that's so powerful, guys. If you're trying to build a team right now, this is the show to listen to, because everything Nathan's telling you, I mean, he's telling it to you for free on a podcast. So don't go out and learn the hard way. Listen to the show. Listen to what Nathan's saying, and you guys will have much more success quicker. You're going to shorten the learning curve. So here I want to pivot over to 150 units is a lot, especially because you guys are selling turnkey. So real quick before we get into some of the nuts and bolts on the volume there. If someone's listening and they don't know what turnkey is, can you just share with the listeners the high level overview? What is a turnkey property? Because that gets thrown around a lot in this business.
For sure. And there's a lot of versions of this. So
Yeah.
it's, to use a musical term, variation on a theme. So there are a lot of themes, and you want to be thoughtful and understand. So just like some people, we hit it. I'm just going to keep coming back to that sushi. Some people like the sushi. Some people like the steak dinner. Some people like the Italian. There's a lot. Those are all food, right? And we have turnkey companies, and there's a lot of variations of turnkey. You like what it is? Whew, got a
I
little
like that. It's a good little
analogy.
analogy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm hungry. You're making me hungry,
I
Dan.
know, me too. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So we want to be that steak and lobster, right? We want to be that top of the food chain. And how we go about it is we buy a house, we renovate a house, and then we sell a house with a tenant in it. And you want to understand what is happening during that construction phase, and then what happens, what are all the specifics of what is happening in that home. So for us, we take the high level approach that if it doesn't have 10-year useful life, so that's windows, roof, HVAC, plumbing, whatever, we want to make sure that everything is fixed so that by the time you, Greg, out in California, or one of our military guys literally active duty right now in Afghanistan or somewhere is investing their heart and literally blood, sweat, and tears, that we better get it right. And so that's the philosophy. There are some companies that literally do the carpet and paint. That's what they do. That's fine, right? So some people don't like steak and lobster. Some people like, Italian, like we said, right? That's fine. But make sure you're clear on what the outcome is that you are expecting from that turnkey provider. And make sure you ask those questions. Like, how do I know what work was done? How do I know if there's an inspection item? What are you going to do about it? What happens once the property management is in place? Understand that property manager, is there a warranty? So we chose to kind of take those things head on. And so, when we get an inspection report back, we actually go through the whole thing before the client even really is seeing it. We just do all the repairs. So we're not fighting our client on that. And we're just wanting to literally say, by the time you buy a house from us, it's checked by our team. It's third party inspected. Property managers looked at it. It's ready to rock. cash flows day one when you close on it, and just make it as simple as possible and as profitable for those clients as possible, so that it really truly is an actual turnkey, as passive as real estate gets investment.
Awesome. So basically, you're doing everything. You're finding the property, you're getting the property, you're taking it down, you're closing on it with private capital, I'm guessing, and then you're turning around, you're adding value by stabilizing the property, you're putting a tenant in there, tenant's getting leased out. And then the last step is, and then you're obviously selling it to the client, the buyer.
Yep.
So there's two questions here, and this is kind of, one of them is something that I'm just curious on. The other one is regarding property management. A lot of people like the Midwest where you are because of the yields, the return on investment makes more sense. Your cash on cash returns are better. Cap rates are higher. So are you managing, do you have a management company that you own, or you have an affiliation with another management company who's overseeing, the day-to-day operations of that rental asset?
So we had built a property management company in 2015, and we went from 0 to 140 doors in like 16 months.
Holy cow.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very impressive number. And we were also awful at property management. And so, although we did go from 0 to 140 doors or whatever it is, we discovered that we were not good at property management. And so we decided to sell, and we now have a great relationship with a third-party property manager.
Awesome.
They do an awesome job. They're built for it. They love property management. They are, scaled for that. And so it's been a great match and a great lesson in that like it, love it box. And if it's not, then we shouldn't be doing it. And so find somebody that's great at it.
That's awesome. Yeah, that was my question, because I'm like, you're turning a lot of units. Like, some people have the management company in-house, some people have the affiliation with the other one. And it sounds like you're obviously doing the latter there. So,
yep.
So my second thing here, and this is just kind of out of a curiosity, I think I heard you on Bigger Pockets talking with Brandon Turner. You're basically, essentially what you're doing is you are flipping houses. You're buying and selling properties. So what's holding you back? And this is just out of curiosity. What's the difference between selling this thing turnkey to a buyer, or just turning around and selling this thing retail on the MLS? Like, for you as a company, why go turnkey instead of just turning around and putting it on the MLS? Is there a difference there? And that's something I was just kind of curious on that I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, it's a great,
people are probably thinking that way.
Yeah, it's a really great question. And I don't think people, ask that question very often. So I think there's a couple of things, right? So there's some stability for us in having a buyer pool of folks who want that asset. They understand what we do. And so there's a nice streamlined process to send that client through, right? So that, and they could be a repeat buyer. So versus somebody who's, having a home on MLS, it's one person. So it's also a much more simplified exit. So we know who the client is. We place a tenant. They're happy with those, returns of their home, or, they love the pictures or whatever it is that makes them pull the trigger on that. And then boom, that it's a less emotional decision than it is like walking in and making it your home.
Oh, retail buyers. Oh my God.
Yes. Well, and then that's the last thing, which is, you have all of these other expectations, whether it be, paying for closing costs, or, we need this close date, or we have
Realtors,
this FHA mortgage or whatever. And again, all those things are wonderful. And I'm not talking bad on anybody or a first time home buyer. Go get it. I want you to, if that's what you want and that's what you have the opportunity to do, great. But for us, if it comes back to that, first part of our conversation where stay in your lane, we've done retail houses, right? And we've been successful with some, we've really sucked at some. And ultimately the decision is, what is it that our business does, and what are we going to not double out with, but double down, deeper in our business? And it was that turnkey bucket, and making sure that we can just do a better job, have a better product, have better customer service, a better marketing plan, better acquisitions, and just caring for those clients. And so that's really why we decided to do that.
That's awesome. And you're finding out, like, you guys are, that's your lane, the client, the buyers, you have the systems, and it makes sense, so that was the kind of my question out of curiosity. So as we head to the back half of the show here, my thing is, you're turning a ton of units over. I've said that several times on this show. So without, going into crazy detail, because we don't have all the time in the world today, What are some things that you're doing to acquire 150,000 or 150 properties a month?
That'd be a lot.
Thousand a month. Look at that. It'd be on the back of the New York Times. Man acquires
Yeah.
150,000 houses in 1 month. Anyway,
Maybe the front of the New York Times
the
with that.
front, yeah.
Yeah.
So what are some high level things where you're doing in terms of acquisitions? Because I'm sure you're not buying them all directly off seller. You're probably using wholesalers and stuff. So what are you doing? Just share with the listeners a couple things, and then we'll get into the best and worst deal ever part of the show.
Yeah. So we really focus on those relationships. It's just all about relationships. So whether it's with realtors, it's wholesalers, it's, direct to seller or whatever. We don't really do much direct to seller right now. We buy almost all of it from wholesalers and MLS, and
Awesome.
just building those relationships. And then the other thing too is, like, when you look at a transaction and you think, and actually I learned this, I think, from John or you when we were in training, what's the most important thing to you in this transaction? Well, it makes a lot of difference to a wholesaler too, if they know you can actually close.
Oh, it's huge. Yeah.
What a novel idea, right? So when you say, hey, I might be $3,000 less, but I can close it in 5 days, assuming your title is clear. And oh, by the way, you can sell me another 10 in the next 3 weeks and I'll buy them all.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Amazing.
it's a totally different problem, right?
Yeah. It's amazing.
So we want to build those relationships. And I talk to my team about this all the time. I'm like, listen, explain why we are here. Explain what we do. Explain how this works. Get to know people. And if you are like, gosh, I want to do, you're doing 10 houses and you want to do 20 houses and you're having trouble, well, start thinking about the people that you bought. And we bought from, and we did an inventory of that. Like, the last 24 months, who did we buy from? And go back and continue working on those relationships, and not in a selfish way. And the Go Giver book is a perfect example of this.
I love that book. Yeah.
I do too. If your income in the things in your life are in direct proportion to what you give, right? And so it's not just about gimme, I need more houses, I need more deals, blah, blah, blah. It's literally, what are you bringing to that wholesaler? How are you helping them in their business? And then finding ways that there's really that mutual benefit relationship and trust that's built over time. And that is where you see that special sauce, and where you can really find that ability to scale.
That's awesome. And that's I'm glad you talked about that, because it's something that not a lot of people like to talk about. People have this mindset, oh, competition, oh, deals, oh, there's not enough to go around. And I want to kind of reframe this call right now that we're on right now. You could actually change a wholesaler's life, because if they know that you're good for 8 houses a month, assuming the deals are good, that guy's got one client he can work with. He knows every time, as long as it fits the criteria, he can turn 8 properties a month. If someone's flipping 8 houses a month and they're just getting in this business, their life will change for the better. And it's like everyone's working up the ecosystem to the top, to their potential, right? You're adding value to the wholesaler's adding value to you, you're adding value to your clients are adding value to their tenants, and it's one big feedback loop of positivity. So I'm glad we got to touch on that. And that's a really great way to get deals, right? Networking, wholesalers, all that stuff. So, as we pivot to the last part of the show, I always like this part the best. I want to talk about your worst deal you've ever done and your best deal you've ever done. And then we'll conclude the show with some contact information if people are interested in learning more about some stuff you got going on with Bridge.
Sure. Well, I want to start with the worst deal, and we've done a bunch. We've had a bunch that have gone pretty sideways. It happens when you do hundreds of houses.
Yeah.
There's so many. So I'm actually going to pick one that it wasn't the worst deal, but it was interesting and some lessons, because there's plenty of bad ones. But the one that just came to my mind, and I was like, I'm just going to let myself think about this, was, so we bought this house from a wholesaler who also owns a foundation repair company. And we had a 3-wall push foundation repair. So if people cannot understand what this is, so picture like the 4 walls of your home, right? And so 3 of those 4 walls needed to be pushed because they had either cracked down the center line, or they had come towards, into the middle of this foundation. And so you literally have to dig the foundation out. So on the outside of the house, you have to literally dig like a, 8 foot or whatever it is down deep and, 4 or 5 foot wide,
Sure.
so you're digging, literally 50 or whatever it is linear feet of this foundation and putting these things up. And by the way, when I walked this house, I will never forget, this is probably the scariest basement, scariest home I've ever bought as far as that goes. You could literally like put your hand. I did not do this because I wanted to have my hand back.
Yeah.
But there was such a wide gap. I could have literally put my entire arm through this, like the center of the basement wall in the basement of this house. It was
Oh
one
my
of,
goodness.
yeah, it was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. And then they had to basically bring in a second foundation company because there were so many walls that they had to push at the same time. They basically had to bring in another set of people and set of systems or whatever to be able to actually run the whole thing, because there's so many walls simultaneously having to be moved. So
That sounds like a whole lot of fun, especially with the basements. I thought in Missouri there was some of these states there's no basements. Like I buy a lot of houses down in Texas and there's like no basements down there. So it's like, oh shit.
yeah, there's definitely basements here.
Okay, never mind.
And that, this was one that I probably would not buy now.
Okay. Good
So
lesson.
yeah, it was definitely a lesson. So we finally get this thing put back up. But one of the interesting lessons in these moments, and when it's kind of fun to like put this house back together, and you're excited about it, and you're like, oh, this is so cool. We can put this house back in the stock, and it's a great neighborhood, great home, all those things. But you have to go back and think about what is the actual causation of this property, and am I actually getting the issue right? And then am I actually getting to the problem? And so what we discovered was after we put all of these, walls back up, we've spent, I don't know, $15,000 in foundation repair, something like that. Oh yeah, it's a fortune. That we still had water problems. So we went through this whole rehab. We get like this downpour deluge, of rain. And all of a sudden we have more water. And so it's literally like the house that won't go away. It won't go away. And we keep having
like a
problems.
scarlet letter on it. Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
And so not only did the rehab go over budget, but then we have this basement problem that, so now we have to trench out the entire basement area because for whatever reason, water would just continue precipitously go down into this basement. So we then had to put in, the drains on the internal side. We had to put drains on the outside of the house. And so the lesson was, not only did we not make any money on it, but it was just an absolute nightmare.
Oh.
And so it's like, think about what the root causes of some of these issues are, and that you take into account not just like, how do I make it pretty or how do I put it back together, but how do I truly actually deal with the problem and understand what that problem is and then make sure you've accounted for it.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot, especially if you're going to be in the rehab game. I mean, I've had guests on the show on the East Coast. Some of my really good friends actually were there. They've lost some big money on rehabs because they didn't get to the root cause. The root cause is we freaking missed this, and because of this cost us X. And I mean, it just keeps adding up. It's like the rehabs that go bad. It's like they go so bad, you're like, who the hell would ever rehab again? But
agreed. Yeah,
that's a great tip. Great tip for everyone there. So let's conclude the show with a good story then, I guess. One that you made money.
Well, one of my favorite ones.
Yeah.
One of my favorite ones was honestly the day that I refinanced my first package of rentals. Because when I'm thinking about this and I'm like, okay, well, there's a bunch that we've made money on. And I don't know if this sounds stupid that, we do hundreds of houses. So there's not a bunch that stick out specifically. It's definitely the ones that go sideways that stick out way more.
Yeah.
But I actually love this because not only did I get to refinance my properties, but I got to take out almost 6 figures tax-free. So, when you think about the rental game and you think about the long-term success of these things, it's fun to me when you start to really see not the first property, not the second property. Okay, now we got 5, now we got 10, now we got 20. I know guys, I was in a room in Dallas. There's literally guys in there with 1,000 units or 1,500 units, single family doors. And you think about that where you have that compounding interest the compounding effect of having your principal paid down, and you have this incredible tax deduction, and you have cash
Oh
flow,
my goodness.
right? So
Yeah.
I love that because it's the inspiration of what did I, spend all this time and effort and money and pain and whatever, if there's issues, and I've had a month or two of just stupid problems after stupid problems in my rentals. But then I come back and think, and you're like, okay, well, you know what? This month we paid $10,000 down or $20,000 down in principal, in the portfolio or whatever. It's like, all right, well, that makes it a little more tolerable.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
And you get to, put that pile of properties together, refinance them out, pull out your cash, tax-free, nothing
Oh,
better than that.
nothing better than tax-free. I just paid my taxes 2 weeks ago, and man, I was cringing as I looked in. I was like, "Oh God, this
Yeah.
is crazy." And it's part of the game though. So the refi, if people aren't familiar with that, basically what Nathan did, if you guys are new, is he went to the bank and actually got a new loan. He got basically a blanket loan on all his rentals, and the bank gave him basically refinance proceeds, which is not taxable because it's debt, and he put that in his pocket technically, and now he's paying back the house. Obviously, there's still equity in those deals. So that's a real creative way to talk about your best deal, and it's something that a lot of my guests talk about. So I'm glad you're able to bring that up. So as we wrap this up, Nathan, what does your rental portfolio look like? Are you only going after single family houses, or do you have like multifamily or commercial properties also in your rental portfolio?
I just have, mainly the single family and a few multi doors. We're really, it's kind of that same stay in your lane. And
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
am
totally.
excited about, some senior living stuff. I'm excited about some apartment stuff, but I really like single family homes, and I understand them. I understand how to rehab them. I understand the numbers on them. And so, it's been easy to kind of get attracted to some of the other things. And there certainly is a lot of positives to like the scalability of commercial stuff and, big apartment deals. But I also just love the steady, onesie twosie deals, and they add up over time, and they're easier to transact back and forth. And so, it's really worked well for me.
Absolutely. Well, that's good to hear. And like I said, I mean, you get one or two, you're probably like, oh, whatever. But you have 10, 20, 30, 40 rentals coming in. All of a sudden, you look at your net worth and your cash flow, and you're like, holy crap. That
Yeah.
dream I was thinking about a couple of years ago is actually a reality now. And then you see that and you smell some of that success and you taste it, and just want to makes you go out and have more. So really inspiring for all my listeners.
Yep.
So Nathan, man, you've provided a ton of value. I appreciate you for coming on. So if people were, if they were interested in kind of finding out more about what you got going on with your company, and then so we'll direct them to a website if they're interested. And also the best way to get in touch with you, if they, hey, say they like what you're saying, they want to follow you. What's the best way for people to reach out to you if they're interested?
Sure. So first, bridgeturnkey.com. So just
Okay.
like it sounds, bridgeturnkey.com. You can check out our houses. You can see pictures of properties, and, we're very upfront. You can literally see all the details of the home, the scope of work, and all that kind of stuff on the site. And then, to connect with me, I'm most active social media wise on Facebook. So I'd love to connect with people there. And, they can check out our Bridge Turnkey page there as well. And we also have our real estate meetup, Bridge Turnkey real estate investing meetup on there as well. So if you want a group that can help, especially, we have lots of folks in Kansas City, but also lots of people who are outside of that. So can connect there as well.
Awesome. Well, listen, thank you so much for being a guest. I'll make sure to have those in the show notes. And Nathan, man, thanks for stopping by and dropping some value. And I think everyone learned a lot today.
Yes, sir. Appreciate the opportunity, and good luck on those chopsticks.
Thanks, Hal. I appreciate it.